Okay, I've started recording and we're going to do a deep dive on feature flags.
Great. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
All right. So yeah, we'll be talking a little bit about the category of feature flags, which is part of the release stage here at GitLab. And it's all about exactly what you might expect, which is delivering software behind feature flags, managing how those feature flags are released, and being able to do more controlled ways of rolling out your software other than just deploying it to production, seeing how it works, testing it, and then potentially rolling it back. This gives you feature level control over how your features are coming out. Just like any of our category vision pages, we do have a section up here at the top that has some handy links to different things that we have. So the issue list is always a good one. And you can see for all of the issues in all of our GitLab projects that have the feature flags labeled here. And so that's assigned to the category. So this is good to be familiar with. You can find a lot of interesting things here, and you can slice it in different ways. I think at the moment it's sorting by milestone. Yeah, it is. So you can see what's coming next via this view for feature flags. But you can also sort it by popularity or not. Is popularity the right one? Yeah, popularity is the right one. So it'll measure the upvote, the thumbs up icons that have been added to the releases. So you can see here that this one has 5 upvotes, but isn't scheduled. So maybe that's an interesting signal that it should be scheduled, or maybe not. It really sort of depends. 5 is not that many upvotes. We have some that have hundreds, but still, it is a signal that 5 people have said that that's an interesting one.
Well, the good news is that the next one that has many, many comments and a lot of activity is coming up next release.
Exactly. So that's good. That means we're probably doing the right thing there. And yeah, so luckily for feature flags, the backlog is only 36 items. So there's really no reason not to just open up all of these when you have a couple hours and read through them and see what they are, check for duplicates, and understand, what we're thinking about in terms of feature flags and what customers are requesting, because some of these will have been opened by customers as well.
Okay, let me pause the recording for just 1 second because there's some kind
of. Let's just continue and chat on the recording, if that's okay.
So just give me just 1 minute, okay? Sean? Midaya? Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. If we stop the recording, it would split it up into 2 videos. So that's no problem. Okay, so yeah, there's your issue list. The overall vision just links to the stage vision here. And then you can go even back further into the CI/CD vision, which encompasses all of these things, but that's a reference. We also have a UX research issue here. I don't know if we've actually done any UX research for release yet. I guess there's a couple items in here. But if you want to engage with the UX research team to do any research on any items that you have coming up, you can open those here, link them to this issue, and chat with the team. It looks like Hayana has already opened a couple things and is working on.
Yes, there's quite a few items regarding feature flags already in place. So.
Okay, yeah, blackout periods, executable runbooks, so interesting stuff. And then then we roll into the content here. Although I guess there is this one bonus sentence here that talks about how our feature flags implementation is compatible with the Unleash API. And Unleash is an open source feature flag system. And the way that we started implementing feature flags was to take this client library and build an implementation in GitLab that you can point the client library for Unleash at the GitLab backend, and it will just work, which is great for the open source system. We're taking advantage of something that's already out there that's been tested. We're not building everything new on our own, and we're getting some really, really great features and also driving more traffic to that open source project. And like I said, it's really just a win-win. But it is good to be aware that that we are an Unleash compatible API as the product manager. And then we do have the public epic as well, where because people can't comment on this web page, this is good to be aware of, that this page exists, and customers may comment in there, so you may want to turn on notifications for it. But then we come back to what's next and why. I don't know if this has been updated yet. I know you're working on your monthly cadence, but I'll go through with it just in the current state that it is. So what's next in Y is adding permissions, and it looks like we're doing that in 12.3 release. We always have this what's next in Y section, which is the most single important thing that's on this page, which says what we're what we're doing next and exactly why we chose this amongst all the other things that we did. And so for us, dog fooding is very, very important. We want to get our own team using feature flags as quickly as possible so that we're getting really good customer feedback on how this thing works. And one of the things that they said is really a requirement in order to start using it is this permissions feature. So that nobody can, not just anybody can come in and turn a feature flag on and off. It's only our infrastructure team will be able to do it. And obviously real customers are going to need that as well. Not that our own internal customer isn't a real customer, but external customers are going to need it too. So that's why this has been scheduled.
So on that note, we have percentage rollout and user ID coming up in 12.2 and for feature flags, which is noted as what's next, coming at 12.3. So should we swap it?
Yeah, if this is no longer what's next in Y and we changed it, then we should update it here. And that should be part of your monthly grooming when you every month when you review these 4 categories. You should make sure that all of this is still accurate. So it can be out of date, a little bit while plans change. It doesn't need to be like that day kept up to date, but it should be within a month. This should be accurate. Maturity plan maybe is also in a similar state where this is being reviewed and potentially evolving, but this is what we identified as being part of getting the feature to complete. So it is viable, it is usable now, you can use it to deliver stuff, but in order for this to really be a complete solution that competes with other products on the market, this is what I identified as being required. And so percent rollout, like you mentioned, permissions, obviously, user ID based access and cookie based access. So these are the access controls. So you can say, I want to give people with @gitlab.com email addresses access to the feature early, but anybody else who's signed in any other account shouldn't. And then cookie-based access, where you can set, just like we do for GitLab.com, where you can set the preview cookie. Then that will also allow people to access things if they've set a special cookie. Both of those are pretty basic ways of using feature flags, and to me, they felt like the kind of minimal things that are required in order to say that this is a real feature. Another one is API CDN caching for feature flags, in particular the status. So right now, any client out there is pinging the GitLab backend for status updates, which is fine, and it's a good basic way of working. But if GitLab goes down, then it stops responding. It will continue working. It won't bring down the app. It will just kind of use whatever it knew the last status was. But many larger teams are going to want there to be some kind of caching layer separate from GitLab, maybe on S3 or something like that, that has the status of what things were, so that A, you're not generating load to the GitLab backend if you have a ton of these things out there in the wild, and also if GitLab goes down for maintenance or whatever, that feature flags are still available to any new software that's starting up.
Now the feature flag itself happens on the client side, right? It's not something that happens.
Yeah, it doesn't. That happens within the code that's running that uses the Unleash API. That's right. And then the more explicit logging for accesses. We have auditing of when things are changing now, which is an important feature that we added recently. But what software out in the wild is requesting feature flag status is also interesting to teams that are using feature flags. So making that available is something that I feel like is needed in order to make this a complete feature.
Okay.
In the competitive landscape, I did a feature comparison with LaunchDarkly. This was a while ago, before we even started building feature flags, that you can look at here. But the thing that I identified as being the most glaring gap in it from a competitive landscape sense was percent rollout. Almost all of the feature flag products that you can buy in the market have it. It's fine that we released it without it, because I think you can still use it without it, but really for incremental rollout, for continuous delivery, for progressive delivery, you need percent rollout. So that's why I chose that as being most important to be a competitive feature.
And once we complete that, we need to replace that with the next feature.
Yeah, so once this, that's kind of the case for any of these. Once this is delivered, once anything is delivered on here, it should be updated then to replace it with whatever is the next most important thing. But all of these are meant to sort of be the next thing for this area, because we don't really plan out, like a roadmap of, a year of features for feature flags in sequence. More important is knowing what the most important things are next for a few different categories here, and then choosing amongst those the one most important next thing that we're going to do, and always having that be super clear is actually much more effective than having a long-term roadmap that comes out. And similar, like if we 1% rollout for feature flag comes out, this can be either crossed out depending on how you want to do it, or just removed. It's no longer needed. It's done. Then on the analyst landscape, when we talk to analysts, what we hear is that a lot of companies have this feature flags problem where they want to release software in a more safe way. But enterprises in particular aren't able to articulate that they need feature flags to solve that problem, or that they would even necessarily call it that. They might be talking about it in terms of rolling back, like safe rollbacks and things like that, and they're not really talking about it in terms of feature flags for whatever reason, just because they're not aware of, I guess, that this capability exists. So from an analyst landscape, I have this issue that talks about improving awareness and in-product documentation or blogs or anything that can drive awareness of feature flags, and what being oriented around the problems that it's solving rather than kind of features that it has, because there's that impedance mismatch between what our enterprise customers are looking for and what we're describing it as. And it's sort of a market problem rather than a GitLab problem, but it's something that we would do well to improve. And this is one that talking to sales, I think, would be a really interesting one, because they'll have a lot of stories about what are their customers describing this as, and what problems are they trying to solve. And we can learn a lot, not just in terms of how to talk to them about this, but like what their actual problems are. So this is a good one. Customer success and customer issues or sales issues. I hadn't found any issues the last time I had worked on this this issue, but it's possible now that there are some so you can get customer issues potentially from here, and by filtering on the customer label or customer plus. Okay, we do have one now. So this, for example, should end up in the top customer issues, and it's by definition the top customer issue because it's the only one. But you might also reach out to customer success and sales and see if they've started hearing anything else, and maybe they just haven't created an issue yet. And then internal customer issues as well. We have, so this is actually our what's next item. This is the one that they've requested in order to be dog fooding it.
Okay, so regarding dog fooding, we have several issues. And I would suggest that the first one here would be to actually connect Unleash to our code base. Because without that...
What do you mean connect Unleash to our code base?
There's an item that was open just for that, and it's scheduled for 12.3. Let me just find it.
It's just not one that I'm familiar with, but yeah, I mean, if it's been marked as urgent, then I'm sure that that's fine.
Because that one's only going to 12.4, the one that's identified there.
This one was 12.3.
They're both in 12.3.
Okay, so maybe list both of them here.
Okay. Even though the dog fooding one is not a direction item, it's just needed in order to dog food.
This one?
No, the one that I'm just talking about, I'll just send it to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, I'm not familiar with that issue, so I'm not really sure what it is, but if it's needed by an internal customer and it's very important for them and we scheduled it, then it definitely should go here. And then there was I can't remember what these ones were, but they came from a conversation I'd had with Marin. Yeah. So this is actually the issue for discussing using feature flags.
Yes.
Oh, and it looks like there's another slightly different one. But yeah, so I've linked to those here just as awareness. And yeah, this is kind of an internal one where we have a dashboard for ops teams, but that's, I think, a GitLab only feature rather than something that's in the product that's used by infrastructure team. And so they want this to be tied into that in the same way. And this is similar to the chat ops one that you were mentioning. It's like something internally that we use, but our team wants to use it before. And that maybe should be here too. And then for the vision items, for me, it felt like talking to customers in their language about feature flags and doing that effectively is the most important vision item for this. So I just said in this vision section that doing the analyst item is the most important.
Okay.
And that's it. Is that pretty clear? Do you have any questions about the history or anything else related to feature flags at GitLab?
I think the most general question that I have is the current status of feature flags is that it's deployed, but it's missing a lot of functionality.
Yep.
So how likely are we to receive feedback from customers at all before we, get down to everything that's listed in the maturity plan here below?
It really depends. We have a lot of early adopter type people who use our features even when they're MVCs, and finding those people and interacting with them is super important. And they are out there. We saw that some customers had started creating issues. So they are using this, and so we should be reaching out to them and engaging and asking, how's this working for you? What can we improve? So chances are good, but we may have to, when a new feature comes out like this, sometimes you get a ton of customers who just jump right in. Like we released the releases feature, and all of a sudden we got this huge amount of demand where a ton of customers reached out, and I had a ton of people to talk to, and it was really easy. Feature flags, I think, because of this, impedance mismatch with the how customers are talking about it, I don't think people are finding it as easily, but some are. And then also, if we can kind of proactively address this, we can find more customers who are interested in trying it out, and then we can build these features in partnership with them.
So another question I have is, on this vision page, is there supposed to be some kind of link to a demo or documentation regarding the feature, how to use it, and so on?
That's actually a good idea. There isn't a place to put it currently, but I think it's a good idea to just put maybe add one here that's existing feature documentation and just link over to the feature documentation. That's a really good idea. I'm surprised nobody's thought of it before now. Any other questions? Sounds good?
Yep.
All right, cool. So let's stop recording, and then we can, once this will convert on your machine, and then we can upload it to GitLab unfiltered.